Welcome to Can This One Easy Cash Flow Calculation Save Your Construction Business from Disaster? Bid more, win big, and grow your business. So this webinar is all about cash flow. My name is Johnny Finity. I'm a construction payment expert with LevelSet. LevelSet is a construction software company. Our single mission is helping construction businesses get paid faster and improve their cash flow. One of the ways we do that is by creating content and hosting webinars like this and partnering with people like Scott Peper, who are experts in the field, and creating these great partnerships to be able to deliver helpful content to you.
Yes. Johnny, thank you, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. And we do share similar passions. We try to solve cash flow problems. Our mission is to help all those we come in contact with. And obviously, since we're working with construction cash flow, construction customers specifically, and manufacturers, cash flow is the biggest problem in all small businesses, but it is certainly one in construction as well. So really happy you guys let us talk and share some tools and information. I'm looking forward to our talk today.
So again, if you're watching on LinkedIn Live and you want a recording of this webinar after the session, scan this QR code and we will email you a copy of this webinar. So you can have for your reference, watch the beginning if you missed it. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Or if you have a question during this webinar, just pop it in the chat. We'll try to answer it as they come in. For now, we have a question for you. If you're on LinkedIn or you're on Zoom, put this in the chat. What is your biggest challenge or your company's biggest challenge when it comes to managing cash flow?
That's a good question. I'm looking forward to seeing what people put in there, because we can definitely address those, and more importantly, provide some direct access to tools and solutions to fix them.
Yeah, there are a lot of common challenges we hear from our customers. I'm sure, Scott, you're the same, like all the contractors you talk to. There are some common challenges, but I'm curious to see if anybody in this webinar has something specific we can address. So Rumi says collecting AR, that's always a big one. Collection cycles, payment speed. Ron says retention or retainage, which on a big project can take months or years to collect, which can really dig into your cash flow. Maria says getting clients to pay on time. That's one we hear time and again, and we'll definitely talk about that in this webinar a little bit.
Yeah.
Avrumi says too much money going out before money coming in. Yeah, that's exactly what this cash flow tool that Scott's going to be talking about today is designed to measure and manage.
Yeah, these are great questions, and they're very common. And so here, I'll give you guys a couple things today, starting with this. Yeah, neither Johnny or I, although we both probably think fairly highly of ourselves and our companies, neither of us will be able to change how retention is paid in cash flow, and we definitely won't be able to make your customers pay you faster on this webinar. But if we could do that, we would just send those out on email and the world would be solved in no time. But what we can do is show you how you can mitigate around some of these things, and handling upfront how you handle it, but also going in eyes wide open of what you can and can't do, and then planning for some planning for some of these problems. What if my customer doesn't pay me on time? What does that mean? And if you have those tools and you're armed up front, you can make good decisions up front on what jobs you want to take, how you want to take them, how you build your schedule, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that are within your control, we're going to focus on today, so you can solve and prepare and be in the best position you can for when and if those things do happen. All right, cool. We'll address those after in some more detail and see if a couple other pop up. But let's go through some basics first. So what is cash flow? It's such a common term. Everyone talks about it. And again, I'm gonna really focus here mostly and primarily on how this relates to construction. So we may keep it simple. But cash flow is the most simplistic answer. It's just the total money that comes in your business and the total money that comes out of your business. Now, that's what it is for your business. What is it by project? Well, how much money comes into your project and how much money has to go out of your project each and every time, right? That's just money spent versus when you receive. What is it across a bunch of projects? So you can see cash flow, depending on what you're talking about, is the same, but it also is very specific to each individual thing. So how your project cash flow runs might be different than how your entire business cash flow runs. And so we're going to talk about both. The cash coming in, real simple, those are your sources of cash. Cash going out, those are the uses of cash, right? And some of these things are different than income. A lot of people think my source is, oh, that's just income. No, it's not, because money from lines of credit can be a source of cash, but that's not necessarily income. So income is a source, but sources are not only income. And then your uses of cash can also be anything project related, material, labor, etc. Or it could be debt service. It could be rent. It could be overhead. So uses aren't just expenses either. So there's things like that to talk about. All right, let's hit the next slide. That's basic cash flow 101. All right, we're going to nail it down to projects now. So why would cash flow management matter to your project? All right. Simplistically, when we're sitting in the middle of these jobs and we're looking and working with clients, and we're working with some general contractors, we're working with a lot of subcontractors, and we're working with material suppliers and people in between, we get a good vantage point of how the project itself is cash flowed for everyone, the whole overall water flow. So what we've noticed is, obviously, if a developer has a problem with their bank and they're building a hotel and the bank has an issue with the project overall, that's going to impact everyone all the way down the waterfall. It's going to impact the project, which impacts the general contractor, which impacts the sub, the first tier sub, the second tier sub. And obviously, if the subs are impacted, then the material suppliers are impacted. So that's the first thought about why cash flow matters. And that flow of a project cash matters just as much to a business. So going down to the subcontractor side, your cash flow is the single greatest risk to your ability to perform, pay your vendors, pay your employees, and ultimately earn your profitability. So that's why project cash flow matters so much. Of course, your vendor relationships count on it. If you can't pay your suppliers on one project, it might be hard for you to get supplies and materials for the other projects you're working on, so they can carry over to individual things. Your employees count out. Obviously, you got to make payroll. Those are some of the biggest stresses we hear about from everyone. I bet you if I pulled that chat up right now and asked everybody, hey, what's the biggest risk to not getting paid? First thing that comes to mind is payroll. And I'm sure everyone has spent many sleepless nights and starting on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, chasing your money down because you know you got to make payroll on Friday. So this cash flow tool and why it matters is very important and critical to those items. So we're going to talk about that. And then as an owner of a business or a leader or a manager of business, your sleep at night matters most too. I mean, you want to be able to put your head on the pillow, go to sleep at night knowing that you got your team, your family, their families covered. It's not just about paying bills, but it's about everybody's families and their individual needs too. All right, next slide. So estimating and tracking your project cash flow. I have this phrase and thoughts that I've used that I think, first of all, commercial contractors and subcontractors specifically are incredibly resilient when it comes to dealing with cash flow matters. First and foremost, I'm just going to tell you guys right now, big kudos to you. You should not think of yourself in any other way other than extremely resilient. And here's the reason why. If I took the cash flow cycle that you guys tolerate and deal with, and I applied it to almost any other industry, the business owners in that industry would be bankrupt within minutes. For example, can you imagine if a restaurant had all their customers come in for an entire month, feed them, buy the materials, buy the food, pay the chefs, make payroll, and then they could only invoice every customer those 30 days that came in at the end of the month, and then all those customers had another 30 days to pay them? How many restaurants would we be able to go to by the end of this month? Probably none, okay? So give yourself some credit and just realize that it's the environment you're dealing with, which of course, all those things went into the chat right there. Those aren't the things we can control. We can't change that environment right now. Not yet anyway. Hopefully we can over time, and we'll talk maybe about that at the end. But there's many things that you can do that are in your control. And so what we've realized that a lot of people are very good at is they have a very sophisticated way of coming up with their estimates for what the projects they're going to do. When I say estimates, what your expenses are going to be, how much material costs, what your labor is. And you also have a very good idea of the schedule you want to keep. And you build those cost estimates along with that schedule. And then you add some type of profit and overhead and margin onto that and put a bid in. And then you win that bid and everything's good. And in theory, if you could do all that work in 1 week and invoice the entire project at the end of the week, what the profit you have on your bid and the amount of cash you outlay that week is probably pretty accurate. The problem is, of course, that's not how construction works. Usually these projects are a couple months, or sometimes they're years or longer. So what the third piece that's key, that's always missing from a lot of contractors, and what we've built here on this cash flow tool, and we're going to show you, is how much money do you actually have to invest into the project, though, like real cash, before you actually can figure out before you can execute it. So, for example, if you have $1 million job and you have $800,000 of cost, well, you don't necessarily have to invest $800,000 into that job, because you're going to invoice week or monthly and you're going to get paid. But what is important to know is how much of that $800,000 has to go out at first before you actually do. And that's what this cash flow tool is going to show you, where that $800,000 needs to be spent and how much upfront, just like someone said there in the chat earlier. And it's understanding that week by week, and then marrying that up to how you're going to get paid and what you're going to invoice on a monthly basis. So, all right. We're going to do, let's see. Yeah, estimate tracking cash flow. Okay, so the big things on the tracking cash flow are going to give you the ability to make those decisions and adjustments that you normally are making week to week on the job. When you start to realize, I got to order this material, but I don't have enough money yet. Or I'd love to put 2 crews on this project, but I'm not sure I can afford the labor. How much am I going to bill this month? Maybe there was a weather delay or not. All those decisions you have to make on the fly. Based on some assumptions, you're going to be able to look at the entire project in one spreadsheet with cash in, cash out, to make those decisions ahead of time. So if you can forecast ahead and know, it's going to cost me $500,000 of cash I have to invest in this project based on my payment terms and my supplier and when I want to order material. Obviously, there's supply chain issues, so people are ordering things a lot sooner now than you would before, but you might not be able to get it onto the project. So you can't invoice until you get on the project. So the other thing is that, and we just want to make sure you're going to make the money you think you are in terms of profit. All right. So let me switch. Johnny, this is the part I'm going to switch over here now.
Let's jump into the tool.
Look at the tool here. We're going to go rid of this. Okay, so this project cash flow tool is on our website. It's 100% free. Anyone can use it anytime. You do not have to be a customer of Mobilization Funding in order to use this tool. So if everybody can see my screen here, I'm sharing. Johnny, is that coming through okay for you?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Go to mobilizationfunding.com. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see resources. Go down to cash flow tool. Click on that. Now, I'm not going to do that. I actually pre-populated a lot of this here now, because what I'm going to do now is show you, you're going to toggle and answer just some basic questions. But what's going to produce this is a spreadsheet that's going to show you exactly what you need to do and how you want to do it. So I'm going to just show you this quickly and how easy this is to fill out. So basic details: name, email, business name. We do not market to you. We only get your email, so we can literally email you the spreadsheet and a tool, the actual spreadsheet information. You fill out what the project is, where it's at, the contract value, how much payroll you have, your subcontract payroll, material, equipment, miscellaneous expenses, what's your retainage, how many weeks is it going to take you to finish the project, do you invoice your customer monthly, weekly, etc. These are all drop-down menus, so you can put in whatever you need to here. And then from the time you submit your pay app, how long does it take your customer to pay you? The name of your company, I just put ABC HVAC contractor. And what I'm going to show you guys here too is actually a real customer of ours. It's an HVAC contractor working on a big giant hospital. What they expected their margin to be, how much money they received off the contract, do they have joint checks? Yes. And what their margin is. Okay. And the margin is based off the contract value and the total of the expenses you put in. All right.
So Scott, it looks like you can do this for projects that are already in process, right?
That's right. Yeah.
We create the cash flow projection for any project, even if you already started it 3 weeks ago.
That's right. So you're putting some basic information here as pay app schedule, what you estimate your pay apps are going to be April, May, June through. Then it gets to payroll, direct, subcontracts, and material. Before I go into all these columns, though, I'm going to switch over here and I want to show you what this end spreadsheet looks like so that while I'm looking at this sheet here, you can see exactly what this tool does for you. So I'm going to switch over to that real quickly here. And I want to show you guys now the cash flow tool. Okay. Once you answer all these questions, this is what gets emailed to you. So real basic stuff here just gives you the information on the sheet. Up here, this is what you've typed in. Up here is what your invoice your customer. This is where your pay apps go. So your schedule, this particular project started April 1st, and it goes all the way out week by week. Each column in this sheet is a week, right? And this is the start date of the week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through. These are the expenses in this section. So here's your sources up top. And then of cash, this is your uses of cash. And then this section is going to show you your cumulative amount of cash spent on the project week by week, but also cumulatively across the project. So you can actually see how much cash do I have to invest in this project. Now, the reason I showed you the tool first is because what's important to know is this information that populates into here automatically is purely off of the information that you submit onto the form. So this sheet shows if you're going to invoice in April, this is where you input how much you invoice your customer. If your weekly payroll is $16,400, then you're going to put your weekly payroll, it populates for you. If you have to pay your vendors in 30 or 45 days, it's going to show you when you need to spend the money to pay your vendors. Okay. So for example, real basic down here, this is the amount of money you're receiving under this week, which in this case is $0. This is how much money you have to spend this week, which in this case is almost $22,000. So far, after the first week, you've invested $22,000 into this project. And over the course of the first month, you're basically spending your weekly payroll and some miscellaneous expenses, which happen to be per diem and hotel for this job. And you can see cumulatively over each week, you build up to a point of which you're spending $87,000 at the end of the first 4 weeks. You now invoice your customer $200,000, but because you don't get paid for 45 days, none of that money is coming in either. So you spend another $22,000 all the way through. So you basically get about to week 10 on the job. Now in week 10, you've invoiced $600,000 and you've spent $200,000. Now, everybody's been in this situation before, and this is exactly like one of the comments were in the section. I've invoiced 600, I've spent 200. If my customers just paid me right now, you'd be up $400,000. Exactly. Problem is, doesn't work that way. So you're now going out here 2 more weeks before you start to receive this first $200,000, which doesn't get paid to you till week 12, okay, in this week here. Now, right here, it'll show you this is the cash received from your pay apps. So you invoice the end of April, you're basically paid 6 weeks later, which is 45 days. Now, here's an interesting thing I want to show you guys about this tool. At the end of this spreadsheet, it'll show you, frozen here, what the total of your project is, okay? So your total project is $3,964,000. There's 5% retainage, and I know a lot of you have 10. In the state of Florida, on a hospital or government project, it's only 5%. That's just a state law, so that's one of the reasons why it's only 5%. So the amount you'll actually be paid net of retainage is $3,766,000. Total expenses are almost $2,600,000. And so you have a profit on this project of $1,169,000 or 31%. Now, if I could see everybody in this audience and I asked everyone to raise their hands, how many people would love almost a $4 million contract with a 30% margin? I bet 100% of subcontractors' hands would go in the air because it looks awesome. And it is. It's very awesome. As long as you finish it and as long as you stay on track and get paid all your money, that's exactly what you'll make. Now, why this tool is so good is because most people without this tool, you run straight into that project. You know your estimates, you know what you're going to invoice, and you know what your margin is. Perfect. I'm going to hammer this job, no problem. But here's what happens. Because you're paid in 45 days, and because you're trying to pay your material vendors and your subcontract labor every 30 days, this cumulative cash flow here in row 27 that goes across, this tells you how much cash you invest into this project before you receive any money, or even after you receive money, but continue to have to pay in. So in this particular instance, you can see by week 11, before you're paid any money, you have $937,000 of cash that you have to invest in this job right here. And that's coming from the subcontractor labor that you're going to pay. You want to pay them in 30 days. So you're paying them 30 days after they finish in April. That's $450,000. And then you have some material payments that you have to pay, which is another $202,000. So there's $650,000 of your subcontract labor and material that you're paying for on this job that are driving the majority of this $937,000. So there's two choices here. You could say, okay, no problem. I got $1 million in the bank. I can invest it into this job. I have a line of credit of $1 million. And so I just know that I'm going to need to spend $937,000. Okay, no problem. Problem solved. You might say, I don't have that. And so I need to rework how I'm going to pay my subcontract labor. I can't pay them in 30 days. I have to marry up when I pay them to when I actually receive the money, the cash you have on hand, whatever you need, you can start to make those decisions now. So now think about it. You're 10, 11 weeks into a job, making decisions about what's going to happen 10 or 11 weeks into it before you even started. And you can get yourself in a really good spot. And so that's what this tool will do. And more importantly, it'll show you that even though you have an awesome margin on a great contract, you want to know that you're going to have to put out $937,000 before you receive any money. So now here's the next scenario. You've now completed 3 months of this work, okay? You've invoiced $200,000, $400,000 the second month, and $841,000 the third month. So far we're at 1,450,000 you've invoiced. You've only received $190,000, and you've spent almost $1 million. That is a critically important thing to know before you run into this job so you can manage that. And that's what this tool will do. So you'll see, even after you receive the 200, you're still paying vendors, you're still making your direct payroll. The high point of this job is actually in week 15 here, where you've now had to invest a cumulative amount of $1,300,000 into this job if you don't make any adjustments to your payments. Okay. Keep going throughout. You'll see here, this is all red, which means, what does this mean? It means that you have spent more money on this project than you've received. And so in this great job that has a 31% margin that you're going to make almost $1.2 million on, you'll at the highest point have had to invest $1,444,000 in this job. And this job is not cash flow positive until week 29. So that means you have to go 30 weeks into this project using 100% of the funds that you receive on this project and an additional $1,444,000 of new cash before you ever have positive cash flow. And so looking at it, this is why this cash flow tool is so important to combine. Remember, there's 3 things we talked about before. I think contractors do a great job estimating what their total costs are going to be. They do a great job knowing what their project schedule is going to be. And this is the third and most important part that typically is missing. How much cash do I actually have to use before I become cash flow positive? As you know, if you go into this estimating that you're going to be cash flow positive after the first or second pay app, you're going to have a real big upside down problem and a real problem in your business if you don't have that much money to put into it. So what can you do? Now that you have this tool, you can start to play with the spreadsheet and move these subcontractor payments around to when they're paid. For example, if you take this payment right here and you zero, you take this, copy it, move it out to here, paste it in there, delete this. You can see how much it smooths out the cash flow, right? You actually get cash flow positive here in week 25. Let me back up to here. And let's just say you move this one to when you are also paid. You also smooth out your cash flow. So now instead of 900 and some $1,000 here, you only have 304,000. So you can start to make these decisions. And the question is, oh, can I pay my subcontractor when I'm paid? Is that a possibility? I'd love to pay him in 30 days, but I can't. So you can start to make those decisions. If this was a material supplier, can you get material financing? If it's labor supplier, can you borrow the $450,000 to pay them in 30 days and then pay the financing partner back when you're paid the 841? And what's the cost to do that? You can start to make some real good choices and decisions, at least seeing what your options are and how it's going to impact this project. So I'm going to go back to the tool. Hopefully you guys can see here now the power of this tool, not just what your estimate tells you here, how much you're going to make, but how you actually get to incur these costs and earn the income is a real critical and key piece. All right. So back to the tool.
What I love about that tool, Scott, is it just makes it so easy to see where all your money is coming in and going out, and how moving little things around can have such a huge impact on your cash flow over the course of the project. Even, you moved like a subcontractor payment back by a few weeks, and all of a sudden you were in the black for a couple of weeks in the middle of the project, which I think would be amazing to someone on a $1.3 million profit job. And if when you think about it in terms of like Maria's question, or her biggest challenge with cash flow at the beginning, she said getting clients to pay on time. If you're like, this is assuming that you're getting paid every 45 days as you expected to. But as probably everyone on this call knows, like getting someone to pay on time according to the contract, even within 30 days, is a real challenge. And so every time a payment is delayed, it increases that cash flow burden and increases the amount of money that you need to have on hand before the project starts in order to get through it. So getting your customers to pay faster is a huge part of managing this cash flow burden.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. Like, so just look here, like just to see how this works, but like, let's just move all the payments up 2 weeks, assuming your customer pays you 2 weeks sooner on everything. Let's just see just watch what happens here. So this comes in at 380. Remember, the high point of this job was 1,444,000.
It's so satisfying to see those numbers turn from red to black.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about it. You really start to like, it's really powerful to be able to figure this out. And you can also, when you run a sheet like this, I mean, imagine walking into your material supplier and saying, hey, look, this is why I need different payment terms. Or, hey, to your customer, hey, this is why I need you to pay me in 30 days instead of 45. And I need you to fight with the developer and the owner to do that. And because here's what happens if you don't. I'll never be able to perform, or you're going to need to give me $1,444,000. So like, just think about this job here, and we run through this now, John. All I did was move every payment from 45 days to 30 days. What you invoice to your customer, I haven't changed anything else. And all of a sudden now, the high point of this job is almost $800,000 in week 13. And the next high point is $950,000 in week 17. So instead of being I think this was almost $1 million. Instead of $1 million by week 13, it's only 800. I say only, but that's still $300,000 less. Instead of 1,444,000, it's only 959. That's $500,000 less. And you're cash flow positive in week 23 instead of week 29, which is 6 weeks sooner. And not only cash flow positive, but you go from, only having about 100, you go from 959 1 week, you receive that 800, then you're only managing 172, 194, 216 to 260. That little 5 week period there is a much more manageable outlay of cash, $250,000 overall. And then you're up $516,000 versus being out $1,400,000 and 900, 800. I mean, those are just huge numbers. And so just to give everybody an idea, when we got this contract, somebody might think, oh, wow, that's awesome for you, Scott, as a lender. You guys can fill that gap and lend $1,400,000. That must make you guys a fortune. No, because we would never lend into this project because it's not good for us to lend that much money because it's not good for the customer to do this project either. And we showed the customer, they don't have $1.5 million to just invest in one project that's $4 million. No, but what they did do is they invested the time to fill this out, to take this tool, and then they went and solved the problem themselves. And they got these payments adjusted. They were able to show the general contractor, hey, look, this is how critical it is to get paid in 30 days. They went to the actual, in this case, it was a hospital. The hospital's going to pay now within 30 days, which means the GC gets paid faster, which means the sub gets paid faster. So the subs actually help the GC get paid even faster. And then in addition to that, they move some of the subcontract labor around. And instead of us not being able to make a loan, we're going to fill the gaps for them, which turned out to be about a $400,000 loan, just so they can make some miscellaneous payroll and make some stuff, which worked out great. And more importantly, they're actually entering into this job eyes wide open with an actual shot to succeed versus getting out there 16, 17 weeks, being completely upside down on cash, not realizing what just happened. And saying, hey, I got $1.3 million out there and I owe only $400,000. I just need my customer to pay me. And that obviously doesn't work. You can't make them pay you faster. It just doesn't work that way. But you can use this ahead of time. So anyways, let me show you now how to fill out the rest of this tool so you can actually see what happens here and how easy it is. So that spreadsheet seems complicated, but we designed this tool to be able to be filled out the exact way with the exact information that all contractors have. Again, they know what their estimated payments are going to be on a monthly basis based on their schedule, right? So you know what you are planning to invoice your customer, and you know what your payroll and subcontractor expenses are. So all you're doing here is you're estimating what your pay apps are going to be. I'm starting the job in April. This is what I think I'm going to invoice at the end of the month based on my schedule of values. May, June, July, etc. And this is really easy to fill out. You can use the toggle arrows, or you can just go in here and type it in and hit enter and move on to the next one and the next one and so forth. This will auto calculate what you're invoicing to make sure it marries up to the contract total that you put in on the very front page. So it's got its own checks and balances in there too. So then it moves on to payroll. Do you have direct payroll? This is just a simple yes or no. If the answer is yes, when do you pay it? Is it vary? No, you pay it every week. Okay, cool. So you type in weekly, you put in your direct payroll amount, how much you're going to pay over that course of that 25 weeks, gives you your estimated payroll. Again, when you get the spreadsheet, if you're going to have more payroll in the beginning and less payroll at the end or in the middle, once you get to the sheet, you can auto adjust each one of those weeks. But for the purposes of at least getting the 410,000 in the right line item, you can edit that. You put it in here like this. And then when you get to the spreadsheet, you can make those changes. All right, this is the real cool part. So when it comes to your subcontractors, and think about subcontractors as any of your labor providers, not necessarily material and equipment, because they have their own section. You can think each one of these line items for every subcontractor, you can put in its own invoice. So in some of the cases, each subcontractor might have their own amount you have to pay them each month, which is what this is here. Okay, so if you're going in here, you can see exactly how much you have to put in, what it looks like. You can add a subcontractor payment here. So you would go, okay, this is going to be installation, same as you've already put in. It's for sub labor. It's going to be for this month. This is my August pay app. So I'm going to put this in for August. It's going to be due on August 5th. Add another subcontractor up. Yep, this is going to be for installation. This amount is only, going to be 300,000 instead. And this one's due on, September 7th, the end, right? You toggle down and you click next and it moves on. Now you're on your materials item. So I do have material. I'm going to put hardware in. So you got one material for hardware. What do you currently owe the customer? Nothing. So you put 0. You can put whatever you owe them for this job or for another job. And to Johnny's point, just like if you're in the middle of the job already, so you're filling this out in the middle of the job, then that's where you can enter some of that information. Here's what I have to pay them. Here's when I ordered it. I have 30-day terms, so it's going to be due on June 6th instead. So let's say you can go back and convince your material supplier to give you 60-day terms. Well, in that case, you just go here, you move this out to July 6th, and then in the spreadsheet, it will auto-populate that. Even though you order this 102,000 in May, you don't have to use the cash until July. So it'll help you estimate those things. If you have another material order, you just add another material order in here, the material type, this will auto-populate. Who knows, maybe this is, I don't know, lumber for whatever reason. No balance. This particular invoice is only going to be, 100,000. You're going to order it on, let's say, June 30th, and it won't be due now till August 26th. You're in, move on. You can always add your next. You can go back if you need to add another material order. If you hit that button, you can cancel it off. Just keep moving. Do you have equipment rental? Yes, I got to rent this machine. It's cost me $43,000. I'm going to order it on May 6th. I got to pay for it June 6th. Boom, I'm done. Okay, cool. Do I have a bond? Yes or no? If yes, you fill in the bond premium when it's due. If it's no, boom, no. Skip that section. Miscellaneous expenses. So what we filled out in here is this is kind of like your the runs the Home Depot that you might have, or per diem, hotel expenses if it's out of town or travel. This is the section where it's just other expenses, and so you can put in the name of that expense, what your total is. You can add as many of these as you want all the way through. I mean, you can put in hundreds of these, and they'll all populate to the spreadsheet based on how you guys put them in. So real simple, real easy to use. Just log through, tag through this, and then it comes into a review phase. And so it'll tell you on here in this review quickly before you look through it. Okay, here's my total invoice or pay app submission all the way through the project. It kind of maps out that spreadsheet for you. It gives you the summary of all the information that you've detailed into here, what your pay app schedule looks like, your payroll, the subcontractor payments that you built in, the materials, equipment, etc. And when you're done and you have everything in here, you hit submit. And then literally 2 things get emailed to you: the spreadsheet that we already went through and a PDF of the information you submitted here. And then you have them in your email to do whatever you want with them. It's all there. And that's it. That's the tool. Candidly, to let you guys know, we came up with this tool because as we were trying to make loans early on in the early days, we needed to know what the margin really was. What are the uses of cash? How much does it cost? Can we make a loan on this project? And what we realized was a lot of contractors had all that information in their estimate, but they didn't really know what it was week to week. And once we started making loans to customers, and then we would make these sheets, and then as each week went by, we would update them with the actuals. It became such a good tool for them that they never wanted to not have the tool ahead of time, whether they were borrowing from us or not. So we would build these cash flow models with this spreadsheet just for the customers for other projects that they didn't even need loans for. because it gave them the ability and comfort to basically move on to the job. And then obviously we have some other tools that we add to this if there is a loan, or they do need material financing, or they need payroll financing, or we're making a loan on the project. We can start to show them how much, okay, if you borrow X amount of dollars over this period of time, as you're paid and you make payments back to the loan, what is the cost of the loan built into here? Does it impact your margin from 31% down to 30% or 28 or what? Can you pay, if you pay your material supplier early because you do have material, do you save any money? So we built the tool and we said, oh, it has so much value that we might as well just put it on our website and let anyone and everyone use it. And much like Level Set, our mission, like Level Sets, is to make sure that customers can just live a better life, get paid faster. Really, at the end of the day, it's so you guys can sleep better at night. I mean, that's what it's really all about. You want to have a better night's sleep because you can reduce your stress and control the things you can control in an environment full of things you can't. And so this is our way to give back and do our part in helping people in a tough, complex way have an easy tool where they can make some great decisions.
I love it, Scott.
Johnny, that's my that's my tutorial on the tool itself.
All right. Well, we'll jump back into the presentation real quick and close it out with a few options to actually reduce cash flow shortages or cash flow problems. Once you have this spreadsheet out, you know exactly how much cash you need at the maximum if everything goes according to plan. You know, on that example that we looked at, that contractor needed $1.4 million at the maximum in cash to be able to make their way through that project and actually complete the contract and to be able to make $1.2 million in profit. I don't know how many people on this, how many people on this webinar have $1.4 million sitting in the bank. If you do, you're probably not on this call. And even if you did, putting all of that into one project means you don't have any bandwidth for other projects. Right. And so there's reducing these cash flow shortages, minimizing the amount of cash you need to put into a project, and managing those ebbs and flows of cash flow is important, not just to make it through a single project, but to manage multiple projects at the same time and grow your business, take on bigger projects. So some of these options include, like people said in the beginning, one of the biggest challenges is getting paid faster. If there's one thing that you can do to help your company get paid faster, improve your cash flow on your projects, it's protecting your lien rights. Now, this doesn't mean filing mechanics lien on every project. Your mechanics lien, think of a mechanics lien as a process that starts with just notifying your customer, the owner, when you start a job, saying, I'm on the job. In some states, that's actually legally required in order to be able to file a lien if you need to. But following those steps in the mechanics lien right process is actually incredibly effective and reduces the need to ever file a mechanics lien at the end, because it shows a level of professionalism to your customer. They know they're taking you seriously. They know you expect to get paid on time according to the contract in order to prevent a lien on the project. And that's such a powerful, it's a contractor's most powerful payment tool. And it's one of the best ways to improve cash flow over the life of a project, is to get paid faster. But if there are other options like financing your material purchases. It's one thing that Level Set has financed over $1 million in material purchases on projects and counting. Basically paying the supplier, if you have $200,000 in lumber you need to buy for a project, Level Set will pay the supplier directly and give you 120 days to repay that amount. So when you think of that spreadsheet that Scott was just looking at, pushing a material purchase, a $200,000 material purchase back from 30 days to 120 days, how much cash that would free up in that cash flow over the life of the project. And then not just material purchases, but financing. One of the things that Mobilization Funding does, is financing other job costs like labor, and all of those costs, pushing them back, being able to free up cash at the beginning and not having to have $1.4 million in the bank in order to do a $4 million project. Just pushes that, makes your cash flow so much simpler, could put you in the black earlier, and reduces your stress overall in a project. We put factoring invoices on here because it is an option. Once you submit an invoice, there are companies that will give you a certain amount of cash for that invoice. It only works after you've invoiced. And it's I don't know, Scott, how do you feel about factoring?
I think factoring is a good tool if used in the right spot. We're not a factoring company. We do work with factoring companies. Some of our customers come to us and they already have a factoring company, but they're starting a new job and they're not at invoice yet. They're like, I need money now, not when I factor. The biggest hurdle, I think, to factoring is the stigma attached to it in construction as it relates to the way it's viewed by general contractors. Factoring, in order to purchase an invoice, which is really what factoring is, there's some things that your customer needs to sign and execute on a monthly basis. Oftentimes, like they have to say, "I owe you that money. I owe them the money. I will not pay, I will definitely pay that money. And if I don't, I'm liable to pay the factoring company instead of them." So it does change some of the initial contract that's between the general contractor and the sub, and that's the main issue that they have with it. So that's why some of those are hurdles. The other thing is, so I think, but when used appropriately, I think it's okay. If you have a good relationship with your GC, you can certainly look at it as an option. And obviously, you can use that tool and say, okay, if I invoice at the end of the month, can I get 70 or 80% of that invoice a week later? What does that do to my cash flow model? And you can start to look at that with the cost.
One of the big downsides that I've heard, and it depends on the factoring company, but one of the biggest downsides is you lose control over the invoicing process for a lot of companies. Is like the factoring company takes control of the invoicing and invoices. The GC has a relationship now with another company that they have to communicate with about payment rather than you directly.
That's right. Here's the biggest problem with factoring for our subcontractors. I'll tell you, here's the biggest issue. There are like less than 5 construction factoring companies that know what they're doing with construction. But there's probably 5,000 factoring companies. Not that many, but there's hundreds of factoring companies. And so if you're a subcontractor and you partner with a factoring company to do construction, even if they approve you and even if they say they'll do it, and you give up the assignment to your AR, your accounts receivable, and they don't understand construction, which most don't, because think about it, you guys know how complicated construction is, and they start to get nervous or scared because they don't know what's going on, and they shut you down, you're now in a much more difficult situation as a contractor working with the factoring company. So if you do go with factoring, make sure you use one that really understands construction. The sales rep for the factoring company that says, "Oh yeah, we do construction factoring, we do construction factoring," they don't. Trust me, most factoring companies, they dip their toe into construction factoring and assume it's just like everything else. Like they're buying a Home Depot receivable from someone that delivered lights there, or Walmart or all the other traditional places factoring is. And they put their toe in the water to do construction factoring, and then they lose their leg. And the construction company gets hurt too. So it's very important that you work with a construction factor that actually knows what they're doing in construction, because you might fool them, or they might fool themselves on the way in, but halfway through it, all of a sudden they won't factor your invoice, and they get nervous and they stop factoring, and now you're kind of hosed. So just make sure you know who you're working with, and
exactly.
You can reach out to me or Johnny. We can help you figure out who those people are.
The last thing we put on here, just avoiding bad financing options is important. When you see that you need $1.4 million to complete a project and you've got $300,000 in the bank, you might, you really want that job. You'll take any money you can get. You go to the first option you see. Often that's, I know, Scott, you've seen a lot of merchant cash advances becoming really popular in construction, but they're so expensive, and they end up being expensive in the long term and hurting a lot of contractors more than they ever help.
Yeah, I mean, they are expensive loans. Anyone that knows me at all or follows anything I put online, I mean, I definitely just crush merchant cash advances because they're not geared to help construction. They're a great tool for other businesses. I mean, if you're a restaurant and you get paid daily or weekly, great, use the merchant cash advance. But if you're a construction company and you get paid monthly, a loan that's given to you that takes money out of your account on a daily or weekly basis, it just fundamentally isn't going to work. I mean, there's nothing else that, needs to be said. Now, you may be in a pain point this week and I got to make payroll. And you know what? Here's why I get really mad at the merchant cash advance companies, because they'll swoop in and they'll give you the money knowing for sure that it'll help you make payroll that week. But they also know for sure that it's going to hurt you 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, and they still do it. And that's the part that really pisses me off the most about it. Because I talk to those companies all the time. They call us and they want us to refer people to them. And so I know what they're doing and thinking about. And I just keep educating, like, why are you guys lending into construction? This doesn't help them. It won't help. You can postpone a real problem for 4, 5, 6 weeks, but ultimately all you're doing is kicking that can down the road, because if you're getting that money debited out of your account every week, you're just pulling more and more cash out. And then the part that gets me the most about them is they call you that 6 weeks later and they give you another one, which makes it even worse. And so anyways, there's other options. They might not be as easy as just sending in some bank statements and getting a quick deposit, but there are certainly people that care much more about your business. I can promise you that's how we are. And I know that's how Level Set is and others in the world that are working on construction. But I promise you it's not merchant cash advances. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. We've got, I think we're already a little over time, but we've got, 8 more minutes left in the hour. If anyone has any questions, pop them in the chat on Zoom, or if you're watching on LinkedIn Live, put them in there and we'll do our best to answer them with the time we have left. If you're on LinkedIn Live, you can scan this QR code and we will email a recording of this entire webinar to you in case you missed any portion of it. Scott did an amazing walkthrough of the tool. I hope everyone goes and puts at least one project in and just plays around with it just to see what happens if you change different factors, whether it's who you're paying or who's paying you, when money's coming in and going out on a project, just to see how big of an impact it can actually have on your cash flow. And we've also included, we will email, in addition to the recording of this, we'll email out this presentation, which include links to the tool, to connect with Scott on LinkedIn, to sign up for their newsletter, Built for Growth, their YouTube channel. They put out a lot of great educational videos on improving cash flow as well. And also links to Level Set resources. Actually, just today, we launched our construction financial management course taught by Stephen Peterson, who's a longtime financial advisor to construction companies. And he literally wrote the book on construction finance. He's a professor at Weber State University and taught this great 12-lesson course on the fundamentals of finance and accounting in construction. You can go to this link and sign up. It's totally free. You earn your certificate and get a solid grounding in the fundamentals of construction, accounting, and finance. Materials financing, lien rights management, learn everything you need to know about that. And also, we have weekly webinars just like this on a variety of payment and financial topics, legal topics, protecting your right to get paid and your ability to improve cash flow. One question coming in, Rumi says, so many things change in construction that last for months or years. A projection before a project starts and reality usually don't match for such a long period. What would you say about that, Scott, in terms of the cash flow?
It's a great point. And that's exactly what I was talking about when I said we start with this project. We start with the cash flow of the project as determined. And I can tell you 100% of the time, it doesn't go exactly dollar for dollar that way. But week by week, we turn those projections into actuals, and then we reforecast the next week. So if you know your labor, maybe the job's going to last a little longer, maybe the payroll was higher one week and lower the next, you can just adjust those payments out on the spreadsheet, and everything just keeps auto-populating for you. So you're exactly right. You project it, and if you see some crazy anomaly in there, like you're going to be upside down a certain amount of dollars, you can start to make those adjustments before the job starts. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to make little tweaks week by week as you start to execute the job and actually finish each week, and how much payroll you had, or each week, and maybe another trade is slowing you down. So the material order you thought you were making on June 6th, you're not going to really make till the end of June. All those things you can just adjust on that sheet very easily once you have it done in there. And so you make a great point. You're 100% correct. And that's how you use the tool to effectively do exactly what you're talking about there and still make good decisions as you're going midway through the job.
Yeah, I think there's nobody on this call that has probably ever produced an estimate that turned out to be entirely accurate by the end of the job. Change orders, different site conditions, everything changes. But that a tool like this, like the cash flow projection tool, helps you plan in advance for things that are within your control. Change orders for the most part are out of your control. They're going to come, but this helps you plan for the things that are within your control.
Yeah.
Great. Well, if you do have any other questions, feel free to contact Scott or myself. We'll include our emails in the email that goes out to you with this recording, with the slides, with all of the links to all of these resources. Feel free to we'd love to hear from people in the field. So if you've got a question about cash flow, about how to use the cash flow tool, reach out to Scott or myself. We're always happy to help. We love talking to you.
Yeah, there's tons of great content on everyone's site. Please use it. It's all free. And connect with us on LinkedIn. I'd love to keep up with you guys. And anything we do is always going to end up there somehow, or you at least know about it. So we appreciate it. And thank you, Level Set, for letting me come on here and showcase the tool to your audience and team. And Johnny and Justin, you guys have been awesome. So I appreciate our partnership very much. I appreciate what you guys let us do back and forth. And this is just another great example of it. So thank you.